Hey, good afternoon. This is Dino Bryant. I'm actually reading in the Sertoma Art Center. Um, I am going to continue um, our kind of discussion, I suppose, of Nero and the Great Fire by reading, if you will, from Cassius Dio. The epitome of I guess this would be book 62, chapter 16 through 18. And I will not be reading the verses because there's too many verses to just basically number out so many. Okay. Alrighty. 16. After this, Nero set his heart on accomplishing what had doubtless always been his desire, namely to make an end of the whole city and realm during his lifetime. At all events, he, like others before him, used to call Purim wonderfully fortunate in that he had seen his country and throne destroyed altogether. So apparently this has been something that has happened before with a person named Purim. Accordingly, he secretly sent out men who pretended to be drunk or engaged in other kinds of mischief and caused them at first to set fire to one or two or even several buildings in different parts of the city so that they were at their wits' end, not being able to find any beginning of the trouble nor to put an end to it, though they constantly were aware of many strange sights and sounds. For there was not to be seen many fires as in a camp, and not to be heard from the talk of the people except such exclamations: "This or that is a fire. Where? How did it happen? Who kindled it? Help?" Extraordinary excitement laid hold on all the citizens in all parts of the city, and they ran about, some in one direction, some in another, as if distracted. Here, men, while assisting their neighbors, would learn that their own premises were afire. There others, before 20, reached them that their own houses had caught fire, would be told that they were destroyed. Those who were inside their houses would run out to the narrow streets, thinking that they saved them from the outside, while people in the streets would rush into dwellings in the hope of accomplishing something inside. There was shouting and wailing without end of children, women, men, and the aged all together, so that no one could see thing or understand what was said, by reason of the smoke and the shouting. And for this reason, some might be seen standing speechless as if they were dumb. Meanwhile, many who were carrying goods, and many too who were stealing the property of others, kept running into one another and falling over their burdens. It was not possible to go forward, nor yet to stand still. People pushed and were pushed in turn, upset others, and were themselves upset. Many were suffocated. Many were trampled underfoot. In a word, no evil that can possibly happen to people in such a crisis failed to befall them. They could not even escape anywhere easily. And if anybody did save himself from the immediate danger, he would fall into another and perish. All right, chapter 17. Now, this did not take place on a single day, but it lasted for several days and nights alike. Many houses were destroyed for want of anyone to help save them, and many others were set on fire by the same men who came to lend assistance. For the soldiers, including the night watch, having an eye to plunder instead of putting out fires, kindled new ones. While such things were occurring, at various points a wind caught up the flames and carried them indiscriminately against all the buildings that were left. Consequently, no one concerned himself any longer about goods or houses, but all survivors, standing where they thought they were safe, gazed upon what appeared to be a number of scattered islands on fire, or many cities burning at the same time. But they lamented the public calamity, They lamented the public calamity, recalling how once before most of the city had been thus laid waste by the Gauls. The Gauls are a group of people who are in, if you will, the north, I don't know, I think probably northwest, if you will, of Rome. It's the benefits, if you will, of reading at a park in the city, isn't it? Emergency vehicles. But at any rate, they are in basically what would be considered France. And by the way, the Latin word for France was Gallia. And of course, this is before France really was France. So, there was no French language to speak of. All right, chapter 18. While the whole population was in this state of mind, and many, crazed by the disaster, were leaping into the very flames, Nero ascended to the palace, from which there was the best general view of the greater part of the conflagration on the fire, and assuming the lyre player's garb, the instrument, the lyre, he sang the capture of Troy, as he styled the song himself, though to the enemies of the spectators it was the capture of Rome. The calamity which the city then experienced has no parallel before or since, except in the Gallic invasion, so the invasion of the Gaul people. The whole Palatine Hill, the theater of Taurus, and nearly 2/3 of the remainder of the city were burned, and countless persons perished. There was no curse that the populace did not invoke upon Nero, though they did not mention his name, but simply cursed in general terms those who had set fire on the city. And they were disturbed above all by recalling the oracle, which once in time of Tiberius had been on everybody's lip. It ran thus: thrice 300 years having run their course of fulfillment, Rome by the strife of her people shall perish. And when Nero, by way of encouraging them, reported that these verses could not be found anywhere, they dropped them and proceeded to repeat another oracle. An oracle is a prophecy, which they averted to be a genuine Sibylline prophecy, namely, last of the sons of Aeneas, a mother slayer shall govern. Oh, hold on a second. I better bring this up. Okay. It is widely thought that Nero had killed his mother Agrippina. So that's why you see this. The explanation of the rest of this oracle follows in the next passage, so I don't have to do anything there. And so it proved whether this verse was actually spoken beforehand by some divine prophecy or the populace was now for the first time inspired in view of the present situation to utter it. For Nero was indeed the last emperor of the Julian line. The line descended from Aeneas. He began to collect vast sums from private citizens as well as from whole communities, sometimes using compulsion, taking the conflagration as its pretext. So let's stop there for a moment. So what are we saying here? We're saying, hey, look, we had this gigantic fire. In order to, if you will, make up for that, in order to rebuild the city, in order to, make amends for all of that, we have to tax you. It's no disrespect. It's just what we got to do. It's, and it's your patriotic duty, I suppose. You could look at it that way. Anyway, or other ways too. Okay, back to the reading. And sometimes obtaining it by voluntary contributions as they were made to appear. As for the Romans themselves, he deprived them of the free dole of grain. Okay. So, and dole means, if you will, to disperse, to give out, to be given something. And you may have heard of someone who was so-called on the government dole. That is their way of saying, what we would call here in the United States welfare, right? Okay. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop here and then I'll record another one kind of summing this up. But at any rate, it is clear that Cassius is very much on the side of Suetonius and might be quite likely, given the dates of Cassius, may have actually been influenced, if you will, by Suetonius, who was a good number of years before. All right, take care there, and I'll be back. Bye-bye.